So there's been a lot of discussion lately, and I want to have an open discussion with chat here, that Frontiers Apollo is going to be delayed. Everyone is kind of dooming and glooming it. It's going to be delayed. And there is historical precedence for this. I mean, pretty much every DLC except for one of them, I don't remember, Beyond Light or something, was delayed. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe was it Lightfall? It was one of them. It doesn't matter. It's not important. They've all pretty much been delayed. And so I get it. I understand why people would think that. But I think it's a much more complex situation than that. And I actually don't think it's going to be delayed. So when we say delayed, what do we mean? If we look at their original release schedule, all it says is that it was supposed to come out Apollo, which is the first part of Frontiers, supposed to come out in summer of 2025. Also, in game, Bungie's never said, oh, that means it'll come out in this month or on this day. The only place you can see any sort of speculation is if you go to the accommodation screen. It says that the season ends in 111 days. That would mean that if this were true and updated, that the expansion Apollo would launch on July 15th. So when people are saying, oh, it's being delayed, they mean from July 15th based off of this number. I think that is a very reasonable thing to expect it to come out on that date, though. If you think about a couple of things, Bungie's marketing used to be the only thing they had to prepare for all the time was one DLC a year. And so they could take their marketing space, didn't matter. They could advertise it for 6 months or 8 months. For the final shape was advertised for almost a year. That doesn't matter. Now they're moving to 2 expansions a year on a pretty tight schedule, plus Marathon. And so, yeah, I think it's very likely that they're not going to want their marketing to overlap. You know, if they're advertising a DLC 6 months before it comes out, like they used to with Witch Queen, Lightfall, Final Shape, that means that as soon as Apollo launches, they technically would need to be advertising for Behemoth already, because they're 6 months apart, give or take. Where does Marathon fit in on that? Because you're not going to want to be advertising. There's only so much bandwidth there, and they're going to have different marketing teams, but there's definitely going to be like some amount of Bungie saturation that they're not going to want to hit. That's what I think, at least. And so I think their marketing schedules are going to be much tighter, probably around 3 months, because if you look at once again the roadmap that they showed us. Every 3 months we get an update. So an expansion launches, 3 months later we get the mid-season Into the Light update, and then 3 months after that we get the expansion. So I personally, not a marketing guy, but if I was, I would expect the major Behemoth advertising to start a couple of weeks after this Into the Light, style update, 3 or 4 weeks after. Nice 2-month window to start advertising for the next big thing while not trampling on your existing content or stuff that's like currently launching. That also allows them to slot in. Remember, Marathon allegedly, I have no idea, allegedly is supposed to come out this year, and they're going to have a huge marketing campaign for that as well. Also, keep in mind, GTA 6 is likely coming out sometime in the fall, right? And so if they push back Frontiers or Apollo, anything, if it's supposed to come out in July, and they push it back a couple of months, you highly risk overlapping with Grand Theft Auto, which no one is going to want to do. There's also the fact that I think it is unlikely that they even would need to delay it. And if, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they shouldn't delay it. If Bungie thinks they should delay it, then they should. But I'm not, I think it's up to them. I'm just saying I don't think it's as likely to be delayed as people think. If you look at the end of year update that we got mid-December, the new destination in codename Apollo is content complete, which means we're focused on polishing the non-linear campaign, Metroidvania gameplay experience, developing the finer details of the world, and fleshing out the numerous quests that you'll discover during the journey through new frontiers. So they've had 3 entire months past this to flesh out the entire expansion. That is a huge amount of time to polish something for a Destiny expansion. And we are still many months away. We're still 111 days away, 3.5 months away from the potential launch date of Apollo. So that's why I think it's probably not going to be delayed off of this time here. They have an immense amount of time to finish that up and then even probably start working on Behemoth, depending on what their schedules look like. And they have tighter restrictions based off of, marketing restrictions really between Apollo, Behemoth, and Marathon. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. And it's a smaller DLC. So we know that this is going to be Shadowkeep Rise of Iron size, much smaller than something like Witch Queen or Final Shape. They don't need as long to develop it, likely. Once again, this is all backseat, not developer talk. But what's chat say? I don't understand why they decided to make an extraction shooter. Well, fairly untapped market, and you want to diversify your player base, right? They don't want, if they make a game that Destiny players are likely to play, they cannibalize the audience they already have. So you diversify, you expand your reach, and you get a whole new segment of gamers while tapping into a market that is still pretty underdeveloped, especially on consoles. K-Phil says, yeah, but it's not just Apollo content that's coming out, it's Frontiers as well, like solo ops, Fireteam ops. They need to test and make those. Most Fireteam ops and those sorts of things, my understanding is a lot of those are just existing pieces of content. Portal will play into, I think they specifically mentioned the Coil, probably things like the Nether or Court of Blades, that sort of thing. Solo ops, yeah, those need to be developed. I'm not really sure how long it would take them to make solo experiences. Like, I expect those to be fairly small scale. But my understanding is most of what is going to be in the Portal screen is content that either already exists or is coming with Apollo that would normally come with an expansion or a season. I don't think they're making too much content explicitly for that. Is the next expansion where Bungie is changing the seasonal model from episodes? Yes. They are going back to a seasonal model. Well, no, sorry, we get 2 seasons a year, but 4 mini updates and 2 expansions a year. So it's kind of like we're going back to the 4 seasons thing, but 2 of the seasons are expansions, and then the other 2 seasons are more like Into the Light style.